Both of these cars, as I said earlier, are the original chassis. This car is originally as raced, with the exception of the fuel tank is a bigger fuel tank. So he can cackle it, so he can run more if he wants to, or if he's doing push starts at a drag strip. We still go to drag strips and do push starts if we're invited to that, but we do not run them for the quarter. We've driven them down the quarter, but this tubing is almost as old as I am, and it could be rusty and hinky kinky. So we don't want to go 200 in one today.
How fast will they go?
In the day, this one was 230. I've never seen a number on this one. Probably the same. This one's got a 392 Chrysler. If your grandmother had a 1958 Chrysler Imperial, that's where the motor came from. They were in Chrysler Imperials. The drag racers figured that out, and Chrysler Imperials value in the salvage yard got real big. This one has a second generation Hemi in it. That's what's referred to as a first generation Hemi. Then in 1964, Chrysler was getting outrun by some of the blue oval stuff. And so they had decided to do something, and somebody at Chrysler looked up some paperwork and said, "What's a Hemi?" And they built this. They used the block and the castings basically that was the 426 wedge motor, but in a hurry to get it out, that was easy to do. We had that. The castings are very, very similar, but the head was a complete redesign. It's nothing like, it's still a hemispherical head, but nothing will interchange with the heads on a 392. They built that motor from 64 till 72 or 3. 64 and 5, it was only in factory super stock race cars. They managed to send some down to Carolina to a guy named Richard Petty, and you know what he did with them. The first race, they got first, second, and third. First time they took them out. Wait a minute, that's NASCAR. They weren't real happy about that, but they let them run them. But over the next year or so, they clamped the motor. They started putting displacement limits on it, trying to slow it down, and pretty much everybody abandoned racing the motor. The motor to this day, the top fuel cars you see today are cousins to this motor. They're made out of billets with a CNC machine. They take a big chunk of aluminum, throw it in the CNC, and go home and come back a day or two later to see what they've whittled out, and that's how they get their blocks and their heads. But the design is that motor from 1964. The startup procedure. All right, I'll start the easy way. If you saw me on the earlier with a wrench turning the motor over backwards, that's called backing it down. You do that to get any nitro that's in the cylinders out, because when you compress nitro, remember the hammer story, it can go off sometimes. You don't want that to happen unexpectedly. So you turn the motor over backwards, and that will purge the cylinder for nitro. It opens the exhaust valve, and so it'll run down the headers. The headers all have weep holes in the bottom of them, so it'll let the nitro run out. The next thing is we've coupled the starter, the snouts of the blower. We use an electric starter to turn the motors over to get them started. We start them on alcohol. As I said, nitro doesn't like to burn, it just likes to explode. The cooler the weather, the less chance you've got of starting a nitro motor. We've got an agreement amongst our group that at 50 degrees we don't start. It's too hard. You've got to put way too much gasoline in them to get them started. What we do now is we open the butterflies. You'll see this in a minute. Jim uses a bottle, we use a spray bomb, but we open the butterflies and we put gasoline into the blower. Then we turn the motor over. The hose you see coming off our tank and off his outboard motor over there runs into the blower, to the top of the blower. That's pure alcohol, methanol, whatever you want to call it. And it will burn a lot easier than the nitro. So we started on that. We built heat in the motor. It's getting real quiet down there. Band, are you through? Yeah. Okay, we'll give them a half a second because I'm not through. We started on the alcohol. We built some heat in the motor with the alcohol, with that little bit of combustion. And once the motor gets a little warm, you'll see Bob and Jim. This is Jim Burgess. This is Mr. Bob Gibson here. Will come and turn the alcohol off, and you'll notice a noticeable change in the sound and the smells if you're in the right position. And then we're going to let them burn nitro. We do them one at a time. We don't get to run them long. Nitro is $40-something a gallon now. What you're going to see will burn 2 gallons, maybe 2.5. So it's, this lady's all covered up ready. We haven't started it yet. And I brushed my teeth. Anyway, the band is still quiet, so I'm taking it at 12:18. We're beyond our time, so I guess we can start.
Go for it. Yeah.
Here we go. Thank you. Yes, sir. That's what your grandmother's 392 could have sounded like. You'd have snuck in the garage when she wasn't looking. Now we're going to start a 426. What Jim's doing is what I was telling you about backing it down. It takes the nitro out of the cylinders.
It needs a defibrillator. a moving
The
mom.
last thing Bob did, and Jim did too, was put a little alcohol in the front of the injectors. So that goes in and lubricates the blower. NITRO will leave them dry. You don't want the Teflon liners left dry. So that's got alcohol with a little oil in it. You are welcome to come back in. This Jim's going to tear all the yellow tape down. He didn't know he's going to have to put it back up.